Yahweh among the nations, the Soleb, Inscription, and the Unmistakable God of Israel, by Ernesto Joseph Sandoval. In the sands of ancient Egypt lies a testimony that many overlook, but one that speaks volumes about the uniqueness of Israel's God. At the temple of Soleb, built by Pharaoh Amenhotep III around 1400 BC, an inscription was carved that listed the peoples and territories conquered or known to Egypt. Among them appears a startling phrase, the Shasu of YHW. At first glance, it seems like just another name on a list. But the more closely one looks, the more profound the significance becomes. The Egyptians usually describe foreign tribes by attaching them to a king, a city, or a land. A tribe might be called the Nubians of King so-and-so, or the Syrians of City X. This was the Egyptian way of categorizing peoples, by their human ruler or by their geographical base. Yet in this inscription there is no king, no land, no city. Just YHW. Scholars recognize YHW as the earliest non-biblical reference to Yahweh, the God of Israel. Here, centuries before the reign of David or the construction of Solomon's temple, the name of Israel's God was already etched into stone by a pagan empire. What makes it even more astonishing is that the Egyptians were not mocking, mythologizing, or dismissing him. They simply recorded him as the identifying marker of a people group. The Shasu nomads were not known for their ruler, but for their god. This is extraordinary when compared with the gods of the surrounding cultures. The so-called gods of Mesopotamia, Egypt, and Greece appear as shifting figures in myths. Zeus, Baal, Osiris, Marduk, beings recycled under new names in different lands. Their stories always tie them to kings, cities, or territories. They are rootless and malleable, more reflections of human imagination and demonic deception than beings of eternal substance. As Paul later wrote in 1 Corinthians 10:20, what pagans sacrifice, they offered to demons and not to God. These gods were never universally recognized as historical realities. They were remembered as legends, but Yahweh stands apart. Even in a hostile culture like Egypt, he was acknowledged as the God of a real people. This lines up perfectly with the biblical record. When Israel came out of Egypt, the nations trembled not because of Israel's kings, they had none yet, but because of their God. Rahab of Jericho testified in Joshua 2:9-11, "We have heard how the Lord dried up the water of the Red Sea before you. For the Lord your God, he is God in heaven above and on the earth beneath." Yahweh was not treated like a tribal myth, but recognized as a living power in history. The fact that the Soleb inscription leaves out a king's name and substitutes Yahweh's is in a sense prophetic. God had already declared to Moses at the burning bush, "I am who I am," Exodus 3:14. Unlike the gods of the nations, Yahweh's identity did not rest on geography, lineage, or mythology. He simply is. His people were not the Shasu of King X, but the Shasu of Yahweh. This distinction separates Israel forever from the pattern of the nations. Their very identity was rooted not in a human throne, but in the throne of heaven. This also explains why Yahweh's name endures, while Zeus, Baal, and Ra are relegated to the category of mythology. Pagan gods constantly shifted in name and story, proving themselves to be little more than recycled masks for fallen spirits craving worship. But Yahweh never changed. His name was feared in Canaan, respected in Egypt, and eventually exalted throughout the world. Even Israel's enemies could not dismiss him as imaginary. They had to acknowledge his name and his people. The Soleb inscription, then, is more than an archaeological curiosity. It is a stone-carved witness that even the mightiest pagan empire of its time recognized Israel's God as real. While the myths of the nations float rootless in the fog of legend, Yahweh's name is anchored in history, carved in stone, and carried by a people who did not exist because of their king, but because of their God. In this, we see the brilliance of divine revelation. The living God did not need myths to magnify him. His works in history testified for themselves. Pagan gods could be forgotten. Yahweh would be feared and known, even by those who opposed him. The Soleb hieroglyph is a silent declaration from the ancient world. Israel's God was never myth. He was always real. Amen.